Any questions, comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
Earlier on you talked about solar power and you talked to the mayor suggesting this idea, which sounded like, the way you put it, a no-brainer. What was his reaction? Why doesn't he do it?
He didn't know anything about it.
Right.
He said, oh, contact Sally Prentice from the Environment Cabinet Minister and make a business plan to her. I mean, I've been in contact with John Lissamore from the Housing Department in Lambeth, who is, genuinely one of the most greenest people in the council, and if there was any sense in the world would be leader of the council. But most councillors don't know about this. Most councillors are dealing with the mistakes of the welfare state. They're dealing with housing problems, debt problems, these sort of things. It really needs us to push this sort of information to councillors, to get in their face and saying, why is the council cutting back millions of pounds when it could be earning millions of pounds from these feed-in tariffs? So yeah, fairly, he didn't know anything about it, very sad. I mean, as well as putting solar panels on your roof, there are many other things. That's a good individual thing you can do. Obviously, food growing is another very basic thing you can do. Supporting small-scale producers of food and other products. In Brixton, we're very fortunate to have Transition Town Brixton, which in the space of 3 or 4 years has a multitude of different groups, the food growing group, the energy group, the council group. These are excellent groups to get involved with. Any other comments? Jokes, maybe? View of the glum proceedings? Any other comments or questions? Yes?
Concerning solar panels, they're all very popular at the moment and stuff, but the crystals in those solar panels, where do they come from? And are they actually that ecologically sound?
The crystals in most solar panels are silicon-based. Although there's a lot of new research into nanosolar, which is essentially layers, very, very thin layers. So it's more like the sort of consistency of aluminium foil. There's a Californian company called Nanosolar who've just set up also in Germany. They reckon that they can produce electricity from sunlight around about the price of a coal-fired power station. Okay, that hasn't been independently validated yet, but it does look like using nanosolar technology, which is a lot easier to produce than the energy-intensive solar panels. It basically just comes out in a huge sheets of it. And so if you plaster your roof or a building with that sort of thing, that could also be producing energy. Yeah, I mean, it is a key thing. A lot of renewable energy production does require a high energy input. And one of the things we need to be very careful about is energy return on energy input, or ROI as it's also known, the sort of net input. If you think when oil was first being produced, you just put a hole in the ground, you put the equivalent of 1 barrel of energy in, and you got 100 barrels of energy out. So it was 100 to 1 net return. Now it's getting harder to find. It's about 30 to 1, 20 to 1. With the tar sands in Canada, you put in 1 barrel of energy and you get out 2 or 3 barrels of energy. Okay, so for all that decimation of the environment, all that damaging the watercourses, you're really only getting out about 2 or 3 times the energy you put in. And then when you add in the environmental effects of that, we would argue it is simply not worth it. We need to look for other lower tech ways, less energy intensive ways of saving energy. So, for example, there's no point putting solar panels on your house if you're drafty. You know, again, it's a no-brainer. Sort out the easy things, the low-hanging fruits first that don't require huge energy inputs. You know, be careful of solutions that require huge energy inputs. I think my time is nearly up. Any last questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a comment. Wouldn't it be great as part of our whole recycling do and scheme if we create little draft excluders, so for take down the charity shop or whatever, everyone can make a little snake or something for their door, do it with the kids at the kindergartens, do it with the women's institutes, things like that. And for Christmas, as well as the Christmas card, give everyone a little draft excluder for these doors and to say that, you know, it's a part of society joining in.
Now, if there's ever a case of people don't have ideas, ideas have people, that is a brilliant example. Remade in Brixton, who are based up there on one of the stalls up there, and they've also got a stall in Brixton Village. That's exactly the sort of thing they've been doing. Stitch and bitch, sewing circles, making snakes to go along doors. You know, it's basically people getting together, rediscovering the skills that we as a peasant society used to have, but they have been technologically edited out of us. Two fairly clear choices, and it is as simple as having a cake, a lot of people wanting to eat it. How do we divide up the cake? Okay? Do we simply let the market decide how much the slice of cake is going to cost? And that's what's happening at the moment as regards fossil fuels, ancient sunlight. Or do we divide it up equally with tradable personal carbon rations, which you sell if you don't use your ration, and if you want to use more, you buy it. But the key thing is that the overall size of the cake, the overall bubble of the ration, is one that doesn't force climate change, that each year that bubble comes down about 9 or 10%, so that in about 10 years' time, we're looking at a society that is only producing about 10% of the CO2 emissions that we are at the moment. Why is that so important? Because all the science tells us that if in the next sort of 6 or 7 or 8 years we don't worldwide reduce emissions by about 80 or 90%, about 60% worldwide, and if we take into account past emissions, that means that Britain, who has emitted hugely in the past, has to make greater reductions so that the developing world can develop a little bit more. You know, if we go over that 2 degrees tipping point on climate change, we know that as the rainforest burns, as the tundra melts, that 2 degrees will run away, and it will inexorably, the average temperature will rise to from 2 to 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 5 degrees, and after that, the possibilities for human life of 6.8 billion people, it's just, you know, it's not going to happen. Our mission for this century is the politics of contraction. It's about how we can move away from ancient sunlight and rediscover the skills of living off current sunlight in a way that is equitable and will bring society back together again.